Welcome back to Morning Joe. It's Tuesday, February 3rd. Jonathan Lemire and Eugene Robinson are still with us. And joining the conversation, we have Chief White House correspondent for the New York Times, Peter Baker. Our top story this hour, President Trump is escalating his rhetoric ahead of the midterm elections. The president yesterday called for Republicans to take over elections while ranting about his 2020 loss to Joe Biden. He made comments during an interview with right-wing podcaster and former FBI Deputy Director Dan Bongino.
These people were brought to our country to vote, and they vote illegally. And amazing that the Republicans aren't tougher on it. The Republicans should say, we want to take over. We should take over the voting in at least 15 places. The Republicans ought to nationalize the voting. And we have states that are so crooked, and they're counting votes. We have states that I won that show I didn't win. Now, you're going to see something in Georgia where they were able to get, with a court order, the ballots. You're going to see some interesting things come out. But, like the 2020 election, I won that election by so much. Everybody does it.
No, he didn't win the election by so much. In fact, you had 63 federal courts that determined he did not win the election. A lot of Trump-appointed judges saying there was no widespread voter fraud, that it was all bullshit. You had the Supreme Court of the United States saying the same thing, even Alito and Thomas in a concurring opinion about what Pennsylvania's Supreme Court did, said, you know what, we think they overstepped the bounds. We should go ahead and take up this case, even though it will not change the outcome or the determination of this case, because there was not widespread voting fraud. So everything he said there, I feel like this is like Star Wars 8. Everything you just said was wrong. And Peter Baker, again, he knows he lost. He knows he lost. He told people around the White House, and please, if you could just give us a little bit of background here, and I know John Lemire wrote the book on this, but he actually went around after the 2020 election grousing to people inside the White House saying, I can't believe I lost to this guy. Yeah. And then he immediately started ginning up these lies to try to get people to come to Washington and try to overturn the vote.
Well, and it's worth remembering that at least in a couple of these battleground states, the votes were run by Republicans. Georgia was a Republican-run state. Arizona was a Republican-run state. And the Republican governors and secretaries of state of those states said, yeah, you lost. And it didn't seem to stop him then. So the idea that if Republicans run the election, somehow there won't be fraud in his mind is belied by the fact that the Republicans didn't have fraud and did run the elections, and he lost. And look, it's really it's an important thing what he said yesterday, because he told my colleagues in the New York Times in a recent interview that he regretted not ordering the National Guard to seize voting machines in 2020 in states that he lost. This is a proposal brought to him in the Oval Office by Mike Flynn, his former national security advisor, and some others, saying he should effectively declare martial law in some of these states that he lost, seize the voting machines, and rerun the elections until he won, basically. And that's the fact that he says he now regrets that indicates where his head is at heading into these midterms.
Yeah, and something the Democrats should keep in mind. John Lemire, again, you wrote the book on this. You look at the fact that, again, Donald Trump, speaking to Republicans, I think it was a few weeks ago, talked about the same thing. You should run the elections. Then he was talking to a reporter, I think it may have been a Reuters reporter, saying we shouldn't even have elections in 2026. And then, of course, yesterday in the podcast saying what he said. But again, take us back to 2020, that mindset on the big lie. It was such a lie that the elections were stolen. You have, even in the state of Georgia, you have him going to Brad Raffensperger, the Secretary of State, saying, hey, I need you to find me over 11,000 votes to tip this election. That should not be hard. Now, what did the people of Georgia think about the fact that Brad Raffensperger recorded that call, called him out for trying to rig that election? What happened to Brad Raffensperger? Well, he ran again in a Georgia primary, and you would think, oh, my gosh, well, if Republicans thought the election was stolen in Georgia, then Brad Raffensperger would be crushed. Sorry, no, actually, Brad Raffensperger won in a landslide. The governor, Brian Kemp, who also called bullshit on Donald Trump's claim that the Georgia elections were stolen. He won in a landslide, won in the Republican Party in a landslide, calling out Donald Trump's BS on stolen elections. And the Georgia Republicans reelected these two guys that said Donald Trump was lying. Reelected these two Republicans who went around and campaigned telling Republicans Donald Trump lied to you about our elections not being safe and secure. Those two were reelected in Georgia with overwhelming margins, landslide. So what does Donald Trump do? He goes back to the scene of his attempted crime in Georgia, and he starts all over again. It's like these people never learn. What does Tulsi Gabbard think's going to happen to her down the road? What do all these people think when they're trying to rig American elections? Do they think this is going to turn out well for them? Do they think that Donald Trump's really going to have a third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh term? Because he's not. He's not. The Constitution says this is it. So I just sit here and I'm wondering, what do they think their future looks like? Trying in the moment to gain a little bit of goodwill from a guy who will throw them under the bus next week if they want to. But here they're trying to rig elections in America for the benefit of a guy who tried to rig the 2020 elections and failed miserably.
Yeah, this has always been the playbook. Even back in 2016, Trump said that, well, if I lose, it's only because it was rigged. He sowed doubt in the trust of the electoral system in 2016. He certainly did in 2020. He claimed victory election night, even though it was clear at that moment he seemed likely to lose. And, of course, he did, and he never stopped. And there's that famous blind quote to the Washington Post in the transition post-November 2020. I'm paraphrasing slightly, where it's like, oh, well, what's the harm in letting President Trump sort of whine about this and do his legal challenges? And even President Biden and his team said, look, he has the right to do his legal challenges, and they were confident that they would win. And they did, all but one. The one they lost was some procedural matter. But Trump never stopped. He, of course, his rhetoric incited the riot on January 6th, and he's never abandoned it, even though Republicans have urged him to move forward. Stop talking about the election you lost in 2020. First of all, you then won in 2024, but it's not helping us as we prepare for 2026, 2028, and beyond. And Willie, there seems to be no shortage of those in Trump's orbit who are willing to do whatever he wants to remain something in his good graces. We've seen Pam Bondi on the outs in recent weeks suddenly escalate the president's campaign of retribution, including arresting two reporters a few days ago for their work in doing journalism in Minnesota. And now we have Tulsi Gabbard. We have Kristi Noem, we should also note, doing whatever he wants in terms of immigration raids. But now we have, Tulsi Gabbard, widely considered on the outs, cut out entirely of the Venezuela operation and other high-profile matters, but has taken it upon herself to do his bidding. And this is not just about 2020. This is setting a deeply dangerous playbook for this November and beyond.
Yeah, and that reporting this morning that Tulsi Gabbard held a rah-rah phone call between President Trump and the FBI agents after the raid in Fulton County. We should also point out that Dan Bongino, who was nodding along in that podcast while President Trump was talking about taking over elections in at least 15 states, was the former deputy director of the FBI as of about a couple of weeks ago. He seemed open to what the president was saying. And Joe makes such a good point about what it means to stand up to Donald Trump. Brian Kemp, the governor of Georgia, the Republican, who stood up to Donald Trump in 2020, won his primary by 52 points in 2022. Brad Raffensperger, the state attorney general there, he won his by nearly 20 points, even after standing up to Donald Trump in 2020. So, Gene Robinson, there's so much to say here. Georgia counted its votes 3 times, the third time by hand. An audit later found that there were only 20 non-citizens who voted out of 8.2 million votes in 2020. These claims that continue to be raised by President Trump, these lies, these outlandish claims about the election have been litigated and relitigated. And yet President Trump wants to go back to that as the country suffers through inflation. Everything's too expensive for most people in this country. They're losing their health care. There are real problems that need addressing by the federal government. And yet were occupied with things like this.
Yeah, and it's all, as you said, been disproven over and over and over again, yet he won't let it go. He talks about it all the time. His claims about having won an election he lost get more outlandish and more outrageous as time goes on. He is now claiming to have won states that, he didn't come close in. And is he losing touch with reality? That's for the psychologists, I guess, the psychiatrists to figure out. But it is dangerous. It does point to one thing that is a real strength of our system that I never really appreciated that much. And that's the fact that we have 51 different systems of conducting elections. The 50 states and the District of Columbia all have their individual ways of doing their elections. Some jurisdictions within states have their own separate ways of different ballots and so forth. And that's a real strength, because it makes it much more difficult for if Trump or some foreign power were to try to influence an election or skew an election result. It makes it a lot more difficult, and that's something we need to hang on to.
Yeah. Amid the ongoing backlash to the administration's extreme immigration enforcement tactics, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem says all DHS officers on the ground in Minneapolis will start wearing body cameras immediately. This announcement follows the deadly shootings of Renee Good and Alex Preddy by federal agents, where in both instances, witness videos contradicted claims made by many administration officials, sparking calls for accountability. Investigators have been reviewing body-worn camera footage in Preddy's killing, but the officers at the scene of Good's death did not appear to be equipped with them. Secretary Noem added the program will be expanded nationwide as funding is available. And it is. This also comes as Alex Preddy's death has been ruled a homicide. A report made public yesterday from the Hennepin County medical examiner states that Preddy's death was caused by multiple gunshot wounds occurring after he was shot by law enforcement officers. A homicide. The organization, Home of the Brave, looks to amplify the voices of people whose lives, they say, have been directly harmed by the Trump administration. And today the group is launching a new ad campaign pressuring Congress to impeach Secretary Kristi Noem over the actions of ICE in Minnesota. Let's bring in spokeswoman and advisory board member of Home of the Brave, Sarah Matthews. She's a former deputy press secretary during the first Trump administration and resigned from her position following the January 6, 2021 attack on the Capitol. Thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Calling for Kristi Noem's resignation. What are you asking people to do? Impeachment. And how do you rally members of Congress to get to this point?
Yeah, so we are doing a 6-figure ad buy where we have mobile billboards that will be circling the Capitol grounds for the next week that will be saying that ICE needs no more new funding and that Kristi Noem needs to be impeached. And on top of that, we have a full-page ad buy where we're wrapping copies of the Washington Post and having those delivered directly to members of Congress and calling for the impeachment of Kristi Noem as well. And we need to keep the pressure on these members of Congress because they know that she is completely unqualified and that what has happened in Minneapolis has disqualified her from serving in this position. But unfortunately, we only seem to find that Republicans find their voice to speak out against Trump when they're leaving office. And so we've seen Senator Thom Tillis say that Kristi Noem needs to go. But we need to keep the pressure on these other members of Congress because she should not be in this role, especially after everything that has happened in Minneapolis with the killing of 2 American citizens and all of the violence and chaos that has unfolded there and across the country and their immigration enforcement efforts.
Sarah, good morning. As you know better than anybody, that it's very difficult to cross Donald Trump, almost impossible. It's why, not impossible, you can do it, but they don't. Most Republicans don't do it. To your credit, you left the administration after what you saw on January 6th and have spoken out since then. But what are your hopes that some people may raise their voices? I mean, Donald Trump, as you know, has the power to silence whoever he needs to silence, and it does take a retiring member off. And to say something, though, we did hear from one member at the top of our show in Florida, Congressman Jimenez, a Republican, saying, "We've gone too far with this. Sir, you have secured the border. Go after the bad guys, leave the other people alone." So what are your hopes that we might actually hear some more Republican voices, at least on this issue?
You know, I do wish that a lot of Republicans would come forward because it's morally the right thing to do, but politically, it would also be the right thing for them to do. And so that's where I do have some hope that maybe we'll see more who will speak out and be pressured to impeach Kristi Noem. Because if you look at the numbers in polling, Americans are not happy with everything that's going on with ICE. In a new New York Times poll, 61% of Americans said that they think ICE has gone too far. And look, Americans wanted immigration enforcement. It's part of the reason why Donald Trump was put back into power. But they don't want to see this. They don't like all the violence and chaos that has unfolded, and especially not the killing of 2 innocent American citizens. We know that Barack Obama deported nearly 3 million people, and he did it without all of this violence and chaos. So it can be done. And I think that if we're going to have any hope of these politicians doing the right thing when it comes to ICE funding, when it comes to impeaching Kristi Noem, it's going to be that it would be of the political benefit to them. And so maybe there could be some Republicans that could be swayed, but I'm going to be continuing to speak out on this, as will our organization, Home of the Brave, and keeping the pressure on them.
Sarah, you know Donald Trump probably better than anybody on this program this morning, been in the room with him for so many instances. Why is he keeping Secretary Noem at this point? Do you think he's unhappy with her? And what would it take to get him to take action? He didn't seem to shy away from firing people in his first term. In his second, he seemed less eager to do that, but he didn't mention her at all at the cabinet meeting just last week. People took a lot of hints from that. What do you think is going on there?
Yeah, I think that in the second iteration of Trump, I think that he doesn't feel as much pressure from the public or from people advising him to fire those people. I think that in his first term, we saw him fire willy-nilly. And also when he faced some public pressure, he would give in. But then that is Trump admitting that he made a mistake, that he hired the wrong person. And so I think in Trump 2.0, he's digging his heels in a bit when it comes to these cabinet officials. And he doesn't want to give the public or Democrats the satisfaction of firing these folks. We saw it with Signalgate with Secretary Hegseth, where there was also some murmurs that he was unhappy with this and that he might be on the outs, but ultimately it didn't turn into anything. And I think right now that's the same thing that we're going to see here. I think that while there are murmurs that he's unhappy with Noem and that he doesn't like having Corey Lewandowski by his by her side, I don't know if he's going to be the one to ultimately fire her. I think that if she is going to go, it would be on Congress to impeach her.
I think the other, the other conclusion one might make, it's just a question, not firing a lot of these folks who are completely unfit for their jobs, completely unfit. Yeah. And some of them taking on other jobs. You have the Treasury Secretary going on the Sunday shows talking about the shooting. I mean, it's all very confusing and chaotic, and it may be that these people are doing exactly what the president wants them to do, and that's why he's not firing them. So, yeah, it's worth asking at this point when you have the performance of the DHS secretary alone raises some serious questions. Spokeswoman for the and advisory board member for Home of the Brave, Sarah Matthews. Thank you very much for coming on the show today.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. Take care. Still ahead on Morning Joe with the Winter Olympics set to kick off Friday. Hundreds of Italians are protesting the presence of ICE agents in the country. We'll take a look at what locals are saying. Also ahead, Joe.
If they allowed us to do the job, it's a mess. There's something in the water up there, and I love the state. I won the state 3 times, but I got no credit for it. I won that state 3 times, but it's a rigged state, really rigged badly with the Somalians. And the Somalians and the theft.
No, he did not win the state. President Trump making more false election claims. He has never won the state of Minnesota.
Not once.
Not once.
Nope.
The president also singling out this.
Never won.
No, he just didn't. He says he did, but he
in
didn't.
fact, if he ran this year, there would be a landslide defeat.
Yeah.
He would be crushed now after what's happened in Minnesota over the past several months. So, but no, never won. Again, there were 63 federal judges, many of them appointed by Republicans, many of them appointed by Donald Trump, who looked over all the facts and said, and I think they were quoting Louis Brandeis, looking at the complaints, and would just say, this is bullshit, and threw them all out, all 63. Right. The United States Supreme Court also using the same language as Brandeis for those challenges that went up to the United States Supreme Court. I think Learned Hand also would use that phraseology once in a while.
It's just, when he goes, I don't know where that was from, but he's never corrected on certain, platforms, and that's the
people just let him say it.
Promulgation of false information that he says every day, and especially focused on now elections that he claims he won when he did not.
When he did not.
And again, the important thing is, and we've talked about it before, Jonathan Lemire, you wrote the book on this. He knows he's lying. Mm-hmm. The people around him know he's lying. They know he didn't win. All the Trump-appointed judges know he didn't win. All the Republicans that were running elections in Georgia and Arizona and counting votes in Michigan know he didn't win. All the Republicans in Pennsylvania that were election officials that were counting votes know he didn't win. And most importantly, he knows he didn't win, because after the election, he would go around grousing to people saying, I can't believe I lost to Joe Biden.
Yeah, a number of White House aides have relayed those stories from the weeks after the 2020 election. But Donald Trump cannot admit it publicly. He never has. He continues to lie about the overall election as well as individual states, including Minnesota. He has, as a brander and as a politician, been very effective by saying something over and over and over and over to try to almost make it be true. And he's trying to will it into existence. And there are some people in his MAGA universe who believe him. Or at the very least, they let him get away with it. At the very least, they let him get away with it. And that's why it's so important. That's why it's so important that every time he does make those claims, even if he won't be corrected in the moment by a friendly interviewer, he should.
I mean, I feel bad. I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, but he absolutely lost and never won Minnesota.
Never won Minnesota.
Never won it.
Nope.
And it's
never did. It's
important to get the facts.
Sad.
Sad.
Sad, yes.
So you heard the president in that soundbite also singling out Minnesota's Somali population. He's also repeatedly attacked Haitian communities, but now a federal judge has blocked the Trump administration from revoking the protected immigration status of those immigrants. Up to 350,000 of them are currently living in the U.S. under a temporary protected status program, or TPS, which grants them legal protections and work permits. That status was set to expire today. The Department of Homeland Security argued last year that extending this status was acting against the best interest of Haitian nationals. But in the ruling, the judge said Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem did not offer evidence that Haitians posed a threat to the U.S., nor properly consider Haitians' economic contributions. The judge wrote, taken together, the record strongly suggests that Secretary Noem's decision to terminate Haiti's TPS designation was motivated, at least in part, by racial animus. The judge said the protected designation will be extended pending judicial review and did not offer an expiration date. Joe, it's hard enough for these communities who are living in such fear. I don't understand the cruelty. I'll never get it.
No. And the judge is right. It is Of course it's racial animus.
Yeah.
That's what this is all about. And Gene, we remember the lies about the community in Ohio during the 2024 campaign, eating dogs and things like that.
Yeah.
But I will tell you, the Republican governors always said, please stay away. But I will tell you, I think there may be some Democratic operatives, the president wanting to go to Ohio, that would buy Greyhound bus tickets for every ICE member to go down to Ohio and destroy the Republicans' built-in advantage in that state as much as they've completely wiped out the Republican Party in Minnesota. Like, this is such a losing proposition. And I'm sitting here thinking, wait, they're fighting for the opportunity to go in and turn Ohio blue for the next 30 years as well?
Yeah.
Like, they're fighting to go in and terrorize communities in Ohio just like they terrorize communities in Minnesota. I mean, seriously, again, they're not moved by the morality of it, but at some point you would think somebody would be smart enough to say, hey, we're just handing this election to Democrats.
Yeah, but where is that person? That person has not stepped forward so far. You know, back when Donald Trump and J.D. Vance were claiming that Haitians in Springfield, Ohio, were eating people's cats and dogs, I went to Springfield, and the people who were loudest and most insistent in telling me, no, we want the Haitians here, we need the Haitians here, were the white Republican mayor of Springfield, Ohio, the mostly white factory owners and employers of the Springfield, Ohio area, who said, we need this workforce. This is a great workforce. These are fantastic people who learn quickly, who were diligent, who and without them, we're just going to crash. We won't have the workers we need to run our factories. And again, I mean, the judge alluded to that and talked about the economic contribution. So this is like totally counterfactual. And there are a whole lot of Republicans in Ohio who tried to tell him this, but there they go.
Just in the last couple of days, Republican governor of Ohio, Mike DeWine, said, no, Haitians are valuable members of our community. And again, of the 84,000 or so Somali Americans who are in the Twin Cities, in Minneapolis, St. Paul, almost 60% of them were born here. So it's not even that they were immigrants. 60% of them were born here. And of course, the vast majority of the rest became naturalized citizens. So the idea that a few people who are here illegally and are Somalis cost him the election is just so far from the truth, it's hard to characterize it. With the opening ceremony of the Winter Olympics set to take place this Friday, just 3 days from now, the concern continues to grow over the Trump administration's decision to send ICE agents to Italy. Last week, the mayor of Milan said ICE is, quote, completely incompatible with his city's approach to security. MS Now international reporter Inez de la Quatera has been following the story, and she joins us live from London. Inez, what else are you hearing about this?
Good morning. Yeah, the latest development is Team USA deciding to rename the hospitality area it has set up for some athletes because of the backlash against ICE. So this hospitality area was said to be named the Ice House. It will now be renamed the Winter House. And this comes as we've been seeing protests emerging in Italy because of news that ICE will have a presence on the ground during the Winter Olympics. So over the weekend, we saw hundreds of people taking to the streets in Milan, gathering at a square that was named after the date of Italy's liberation from fascism back in 1945. We've heard local officials being really forceful in their pushback, saying that ICE agents are not welcome in Milan. We should point out that the branch of ICE that's going to be involved here is not the same one that's been involved, on the front lines of the immigration crackdown in the U.S. This is a branch that is known as Homeland Security Investigations. They typically deal with things like drug smuggling or human trafficking. In this case, they're going to be assisting with security. We know they're going to be working alongside other U.S. U.S. law enforcement agencies, and DHS has been clear that they would not be carrying out immigration enforcement operations. But the very fact that ICE will have a presence at the Winter Games is, really sparking outrage across Italy. I think, Italians, but people across Europe more broadly have been shocked to see the images coming out of Minnesota. And meanwhile, another controversy hanging over the Olympics. So the chair of the LA 2028 Games named in the Epstein files. So we did get a reaction from the International Olympic Committee president reacting to all of this, calling it sad and distracting. I'll let you listen to what she had to say.
I think anything that is distracting from these games is sad, right? But we've learned over the many years, and I look at these gentlemen next to me, there's always been something that has taken the leading up to the games, whether it has been communities, whether it's been Zika, COVID, there has always been something.
And the Winter Games are set to begin on Friday. We know that Vice President J.D. Vance and Secretary of State Marco Rubio are expected to attend. The U.S. this time around is sending its biggest delegation ever, so 232 American athletes expected to compete, but they are facing stern competition. Last time around, it was Norway that won both the most medals and the most gold medals, guys.
We'll be watching opening ceremony on Friday. MS Now international reporter Inez de la Cotera live for us from London. Thank you. So, Peter Baker, before we let you go, the ICE operations, now we see the reach of ICE extending to the Winter Olympics in Italy, but there have been some cosmetic moves, which is to say, Bovino out, Tom Homan in, running operations in Minneapolis. Yesterday, we heard from Kristi Noem that there will be body cameras now on the ICE agents. But when you talk to people on the ground in these cities, tactically, it doesn't feel like that much has changed. So how is the White House still grappling with the optics of it, the policy of it, and just how unpopular it continues to be in this country?
Yeah, I think you're right to say cosmetic. I think that they've tried to tone down certain things at certain moments, but it hasn't been a fundamental shift. If you saw what the president still says about this when he's not being restrained by aides, he still calls Alex Preddy an agitator, an almost insurrectionist online. He's made clear, we talked to reporters over the weekend at the Kennedy Center, that he wasn't going to withdraw, forces from Minnesota. He's made.
Yeah, grind mode on, can't kill my drive. Turn the pressure up, I come alive. Grind mode on, I don't fold, I don't quit. Hunger in my chest, every beat I commit. Eyes on the prize, no sleep till it's won. World in my hands when the grind mode's on. Wake up with a vision, I'm locked on the target. Turn pain into fuel, I'm a flame, I spark it. No shortcuts here, I embrace every test. Pressure on my shoulders, still I handle it best. I was made for the climb, every loss, every scar. Built me in the steel, now I shine like a star. If the road gets rough, I just double my speed. Ambition on 10, I was born to lead. Grind mode on, I don't fold, I don't quit. Hunger in my chest, every beat I commit. Eyes on the prize, no sleep till it's won. World in my hands when the grind mode's on. They said limits exist, but I shattered the frame. Every wall in my path is just fuel for the frame. Discipline heavy, but my spirit is free. I don't chase success, success chases me. I'm the storm and the calm, I'm the rise, I'm the proof. Every bar that I drop is the grind in the booth. Blood, sweat, tears, that's the code I trust. I don't wait for the crown,